Hello and welcome to Endurance Minded. It's the podcast that aims to redefine what it means to reach our full potential by exploring how movement and mindset impacts our lives and how we can all work to show up as the best versions of ourselves. I'm your host, Taylor Thomas, founder at TEC, and before we get started, I've got an all call. If you're a coach or an entrepreneur in the health and fitness industry who's trying to grow your business without burning out, I want to personally invite you to apply for the Growth Circle. The Growth Circle is our business accelerator program at TEC, and it's designed specifically to serve providers like you in the health and fitness industry. People who are incredible at what they do, but they need a proven framework and real support to actually scale. Let's be real, running a coaching business can feel like a grind. You're juggling programming and client communication, marketing, admin work, and somehow you're still trying to grow your business. That's where the Growth Circle comes in. Inside the program, we help you nail down your ideal client and get really clear on what your offer is. We help you build a consistent lead gen process so you're not wondering where your next client comes from. We help you improve your sales skills without feeling salesy. And most importantly, create systems and support so that you're not doing it alone. You'll be a part of a driven community of other business owners in this space who get it. We host regular group calls, team intensives, mastermind sessions to make sure you're never stuck trying to figure it out in a silo. So if you're tired of winging it, if you're tired of trying to do it all by yourself, to recreate the wheel, figure out what levers to pull, what's broken and what's not, if you're ready to turn your passion into a business that actually works for you, I want to invite you to apply. You can find the link to the Growth Circle in our show notes. And I want you to really think about what's best for you and your business. I want you to think about how your business can really make an impact on the industry and how it can give you the life that you're excited about and make the money that you deserve, working with the clients that you love, spending time investing in the things that you care about and you're passionate about. So if this is a problem you're committed to solving and you want to take your business to the next level, again, click the link in the show notes. I can't wait to hear from you. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Endurance Minded. So I know that a lot of our conversations that we have on this show center around endurance, specifically in the context of performance. So training for races, building businesses, leading teams, pushing through difficult seasons. But one of the things that becomes clear over time is that the most meaningful form of endurance at its core isn't tied to any single event or goal. It's tied to how someone chooses to live their life over the long term. Because endurance really at its core isn't just about how far you can go in a day or even in a season. It's about who you become over decades. It's about how you respond to fear, how you navigate adversity, and whether you're willing to keep evolving, even when it would be easier to stay exactly where you're at. So today's guest, Margie Goldsmith, is a powerful example of what that kind of lifelong endurance can look like. Margie is an award-winning travel writer. She's a best-selling author and someone who spent her life leaning into challenge, adventure, and growth above all else. She's traveled to over 150 countries across all 7 continents, completed marathons and Olympic distance triathlons. She's summited Mount Rainier, made it to advanced base camp on the north face of Mount Everest. But what makes her story especially compelling isn't just her list of accomplishments. It's the transformation behind them. Margie describes herself as someone who started from a place of fear, someone who felt limited by her circumstances and unsure of what was possible. And over time, through a series of decisions that she made to step into discomfort, she completely reshaped her identity and the way that she approaches life. She's also faced challenges that go far beyond physical endurance, including surviving stage 4 pancreatic cancer and later lung cancer, experiences that bring a completely different perspective to what it means to actually be resilient. In this conversation, we explore that journey from fear to being a badass and what it really takes to build a life that feels aligned, intentional, and fully lived. We talk about the role of physical challenges played in shaping her confidence, how travel expanded her perspective and what's possible, and why endurance just isn't about pushing harder. It's about continuing to choose growth no matter your age or stage of life. This episode is about reinvention. It's about courage. It's about adventure. It is about living an inspired life and having the kind of endurance that plays out over a lifetime. So with that, I am extremely honored and grateful to offer you my conversation with Margie Goldsmith. Margie, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good, Taylor. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I like to start typically where all great stories start, which is at the beginning. So I'd love to understand from your perspective, maybe just take us back to the earlier version of you. I know you described that kind of early version of yourself as, in your words, fearful. Who was that person? Who was she? Early days.
Who was I, or who was making me fearful?
I think both. Let's start with you, and then I'd love to understand what were you afraid of, or what was keeping you in fear?
As a very young child, one of three, and me in the middle. My parents didn't really want children. It was, I guess, just about the end of World War II. So if you had children, you didn't have to go into the army. And I think that's why they had them. But they didn't know anything about children, and they didn't really want them. And they made that apparent to us. My father was a hitter. To this day, I'll flinch because there were a lot of slaps across the face. And my mother was just a little bit wacko. She kept saying things like, I don't know why I had children. It's not worth it. Don't do it. So I grew up terrified of him because of his physicality, and he was a big man, and afraid of her because whatever I said to her, I was constantly telling her to go to hell. She'd say, wait till your father gets home. You will be severely punished. And the only way I wasn't afraid is if I tried sports and ran away. Any kind of physical movement would get me out of that horrible home scene. So I immediately gravitated towards any kind of sports I could do, but lived my entire childhood in abject terror of these parents. There was physical abuse, mental abuse. There was sexual abuse. My older sister was a schizophrenic, so that created a lot of problems. Both parents were alcoholics, and my father eventually committed suicide. So it was a very unhappy, dysfunctional family. I'm sure I'm not the only family in the world a person in the world who came from a family like that. How is your family?
Yeah, they all come with challenges, right? I think it's I come from a loving family, but one with challenges, and yeah, I was the first of two, born to young parents and to a kind of generationally young family. My grandparents had my parents young, and so I think there was oftentimes maybe a steep learning curve, but and I spent a lot of time with my grandparents, and that was I grew up in the rural South in South Carolina, and so work ethic was really the thing that everybody hung their hat on. Everybody, you could work hard and you could. So, I'm grateful for that. I've certainly had to kind of unpack and manage my relationship to work. There were parts of that were certainly as a young adult and even into kind of early middle age, not particularly healthy relationship with work based on some of those narratives as a child and how you find your self-worth in that work. But yeah, I think, it's dynamic, and certainly yours, like you said, I mean, horrible and scary and challenging, but it is, I think we all have some versions of the things we carry with us from those experiences early on we don't get to pick our family, and we don't get to pick how they behave and how they think and their emotional intelligence and so on. And so, with all of those dynamics, was there a shift or kind of a defining moment where you thought to yourself, I know you said sports and that's how sounds like maybe you coped or created space, but was there a defining moment where you decided I'm not going to live like this anymore, or I'm going to take some action to get me out of this and build my own narrative?
As a child, I was stuck living in my house, and I was stuck living there through high school. When I went to college, that was when my father committed suicide. So then there was still my mother driving me crazy. And I decided I went to see a doctor because I had such horrible stomach aches. And he said, there's nothing wrong with your stomach. You're living with your mother. That's the problem. So
yeah, what was that? Take us back. What was that defining moment for you where you decided, I'm not going to live like this anymore?
After I graduated from college, I was walking around campus and I saw there was a little piece of paper. It said Columbia University charter flight to Paris, $200 round trip. And I thought, this is perfect. It left in May. It came back in September. I'd come back to get an MFA. So I get on this plane to Paris, terrified because I don't speak any other language. I'd had 3 years of high school French, but that means montagne or a rich. You don't learn to say anything that you need in a conversation. So I get to Paris and I find a little $3 a night hotel, which was gorgeous. And I walk around Paris. It's cold. It's dark. It's freezing. It's raining all the time, and no cute French guy hits on me. So I'm disappointed. I leave Paris. I go to England. I go to Rome. I go to Venice. I go to Florence. I take the ferry to Greece, and I'm doing all this by myself, and nobody's saying you're not good enough. How can you possibly do that? And I realize that I'm getting by in all these different countries without the language by myself, and I'm doing just fine. So then it's coming back. I go back to Nice, and I'm on a train from Nice to Paris, and I'm supposed to catch my plane the next day to go back home. And I'm thinking about how my mother gives me all these stomach aches, how I really don't want to get an MFA because I don't want to teach, so I don't need an advanced degree. All I want to do is write. And why did I not like Paris when everybody loves it? So I decide I am going to stay in Paris till I learn what does it mean to love Paris. So I stay in my little $3 a night hotel, and I send a note on a 12-year-old is on the train. I say, are you going back to New York tomorrow? She said, yes. I said, do me a favor. Will you call my mother and give her this message? And she said, sure. So I wrote down my mother's number. Dear Mom, I've decided I'm going to stay in Paris. Well, immediately the phone rings. What do you mean you're going to stay in Paris? I said, I'm going to stay here. I'm going to stay here for a while and learn about Paris. Are you in trouble? No. Are you pregnant? No. Then why on earth are you staying in Paris? I thought you were coming back for an MBA. I said, I don't need an MBA. I'm going to stay here and learn why everyone loves Paris. And I'm going to write. So that's exactly what I did. And the more I stayed by myself, the more confidence I gained. I started to write my first novel, which I eventually finished. It was called Screw Up. I doubt it's in print now. It was published in 1972. And I learned how to speak French. I went to Alliance Française, and I developed an entire life there. I married husband number one, who was a lot older. He'd been blacklisted by McCarthy, but he was a filmmaker. And that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to learn how to make films because I knew that now I'd written this book. Now what? You can't just write another book. You're spending forever trying to market the book and sell the book. So I learned the film trade. And by then I had a lot of confidence. And he was 27 years older. And his friends would say, well, what are your values? I had no idea what they were talking about. I didn't know what values were because I hadn't been brought up with any, except my mother had always said, I want you children to be happy. Well, what does that mean? Who lives in a permanent state of happiness? So that's a very long answer to when it changed.
I love that. What I mean, it sounds like it may have been, but I want to just ask to get more color. It sounds like the kind of singular thing that allowed you, or maybe even felt like kind of forced you to stay in France, was that you didn't want to go back to your mother. But that's a very uncomfortable situation. There was lots of unknowns, and you didn't speak the language and all these things. I mean, was there any other driving force that pushed you to step into that level of discomfort? Because it's almost like trading, they're different, but it's one type of discomfort for another type of discomfort. Was it just not going back to your mother? Is there anything that kind of pushed you to continue to do things that were really hard? Because, I mean, most people would shy away from that as well.
I think that by that time I had developed an I'll get even, I'll show you attitude. And I'd been dating a guy from Colombia, and I had told him I was going to go to Europe, but I was really kind of fishing. I didn't really want to go to Europe. I wanted him to say, move in with me, but he didn't. And when I told him I was going to Europe, he said, it'll make a woman out of you. So the whole time I'm in Europe, I'm thinking, I'll show you. I will show you that I could be a woman. I don't need you. And when I come back, you're going to want me so much. Well, by the end of the summer, I thought, I don't want him. This guy has been horrible to me. And so I'm beginning to grow up. By then, I think I was 21. And so that was a big force. I think men are always part of your life, as are women, if you're a man, or whatever your partner is, because we're a social animal and we're used to togetherness. So that was part of it. But by the time I was writing my novel and had met husband number one, who turned, as I said, was a film director and was learning so much about film. He was my first real mentor, other than my fourth grade teacher who had said, you're a great writer, keep writing. And the sixth grade teacher, I had written about my sister, the schizophrenic, and my sixth grade teacher had torn up the paper and said, don't you dare write lies like that. And I thought, this is hopeless. She didn't even believe my real family. But his name was John. I had 3 J's, John, Jack, and Jamie, for 3 marriages. It wasn't our purpose.
You have a type, I guess, the J type, maybe. What I want to shift maybe forward, or I'd be curious to understand. I know Outward Bound was a big part of your life, and that's something that you've wrote about. And when was that in relation to the timeline that you've painted for us? And tell me more about that. How did it change your life? What happened there, and when was that in kind of this timeline?
I came back to America, divorced husband number one, had a friend who said, hey, you have to come on the Yampa River, where the Yampa meets the Green River, on a rafting trip with Outward Bound. It's an adult invitational trip. And I'm thinking, my God, this would be Girl Scout camp, but without the cookies. And I said, why on earth would I want to do that? And she said, trust me, it'll be fabulous. So I went on this trip, learned how to paddle the rapids. They weren't huge rapids, but they were okay. And the guide said, you have to come back and do the Colorado if you like big rapids, because that's where the great rapids are. So by then I'd met husband number 2, who was a big shot in the legal field. And he had helped get the SEC chairman into Clinton's White House. And the SEC chairman was a big Outward Bound fan and invited Jack on a trip doing the first half of the river. Then they'd hike up and the second half would come in. And Jack had no intention of going. For him, outside was noisy. I said, what's noisy? He said, birds. And so I said, well, I'll go. Well, Jack was thrilled that someone was going in his place. The SEC chairman wasn't so thrilled. He preferred to have Jack, but I went and I do the first half of the river and I fall in love with the Colorado River, with the the cliffs coming up thousands of feet and the light changing and being stuck in an eddy and getting out of it and paddling the medium-sized rapids and a few big ones. And we come to the end and they're supposed to hike up the Bright Angel Trail. And my guide says, "You're crazy to leave now," because a new group was coming in, another outward bound group. I said, "Why?" She said, "All the great rapids are on the second half of the river. Sockdolliger, Alive Below Crystal, Lava Falls. Stay here, because if you come back, you'll have to start at the beginning again to get the full understanding of the river." And I thought, I'll never get back. So once again, I'm a really good note sender. The person who would sleep next to me in her sleeping bag, Karen, I said, "Karen, if I give you a note, will you call Jack when you get back up to land?" And she said, "Sure." So she called my husband and said, "Margie's not coming home for another week." So I did the second half of the river, which was extraordinary. Those rapids are thrilling. You can't get a better experience. And at the end of the trip, I realized that my life had come to an eddy, and I had to get out of that, because as wonderful as he was and as good as it looked from the outside, I could have anything I wanted. He gave me a Porsche with a license plate for Margie. I had all these charge cards. He wanted me to wear designer clothes. That wasn't me. I'm just a nature girl, and I knew I had to leave. He, of course, was livid that I'd stayed on the river another week. So I divorced him, and then I took up tennis with a passion, running with a passion, triathlons, marathons, any kind of physical activity to keep the adrenaline up and to not feel lonely. And so that was part 2 of my life. I became a supercharged athlete.
What in that time in the Colorado and in the Grand Canyon, and I've been lucky enough to live in Arizona and spend a lot of time in the Grand Canyon. And so I certainly understand how inspiring that place is. And it's had a major impact on my life in a lot of ways, but it obviously created this inflection point where you recognize that you had, more, there was more to life maybe, or you had more capacity, or you could do more. But I'm curious, what did that experience specifically teach you about your own capacity? Because it clearly was a demarcation where you went out and did a lot of, physical things and you expanded yourself. But when you're in that moment, what was it that, what were the takeaways there?
Well, there were 2 things. We had to do a lot of rappelling and belaying. And the big macho man always wanted to go first, and they were going to show how quickly they could get up the stone. And all of them were almost crying. So I saved myself for last because I was, I could run fast, but I'd never climbed. And I put my foot up. I can't get up. I try a second time. I'm sure you're a climber. And so they say, on belay. And so finally the third time, I get it. And I realize that it's not your hands pulling you up. It's your legs propelling you up that rock. The hands are just to hold on. And I go, wham. And I get to the top, and the guide is there. And he goes, "Spider Woman, how did you get up here so quickly?" That was a huge piece of encouragement. No one had ever called me Spider Woman, or no one had ever said, "Wow, you're fast." That was one thing. The other thing was, in the beginning, I chose left bow. So you got these waves splashing you in the face. I'm paddling away because these are rubber rafts. This is not George Brown. This is not anything electrified or motorized. And it came so that I loved digging my blade into the pounding surf and pushing it back and getting through the most challenging rapids. And that gave me so much power and so much love for myself, which I sure hadn't had much of all my life. And I knew that I needed always to be outside. When I got home, I pretty much told him right away I wanted a divorce. You don't divorce a very successful corporate lawyer when you've been playing with all the celebrities and going on their private jets and helicopters. It didn't mean anything to me anymore. By the way, I still had my film production company, which I had started shortly after husband number one. And husband number two had said, "Oh, you don't need to work." I said, "Yes, I do." So when I left him, I just put more and more into my company, took on more and more travel jobs, and began to travel the world. So now I was empowered. I wasn't entitled and privileged the way husband number two had been with all his entitled and privileged friends, but it was now real and a new life.
So you went into all these different activities, said triathlon and running, and I know you've summited peaks and been towards Everest and all these things. And I know that I've, for myself and lots of folks that I've talked to, the physical challenge component is when we engage in activities like this, whether it's, whatever it is and however it manifests. The physical piece is really just kind of one part of it. There's something deeper, right? Like what we get on the other side of engaging in that activity is something greater than just, our fitness or how our body moves through the world. And so from your experience, what was the something deeper outside of just the physical challenge as you started to kind of, apply yourself more physically in the world with all these types of experiences?
Okay, Taylor, this is going to shock you. It's not going to be what you would expect.
Oh, I'm ready.
What I learned was that for all those people who are never going to go climb Rainier, who are never going to go parachuting, they're not going to do anything except stay in their couches, I could bring them with me on my journeys. I would let them feel my fear, show them how beautiful it was out there, let them smell the fresh air. And that's what did it for me, taking you there so that some reader would say, "Wow, thank you so much. I won't get there, but now I want to get there." So that to me was the joy to be able to share it, because not that many people can just go around and do all these physical challenges, either out of fear or out of they don't have the money or they don't have the time or they don't have the desire.
For people that do, I agree with you. Certainly, there are, like you said, there are people that are never, for a number of reasons, never going to have those opportunities. But for the people that would like to do those things, they want to run a marathon or do a triathlon or climb Rainier, but then they don't, and they have the resources and the tools and whatever. What do you think? What keeps those people from seeking more, or what keeps those people complacent versus doing the things that they say they want? What's that?
I think they're afraid of failure. I think they're afraid they won't be able to do it, so they're not going to even attempt it because they don't want to fail. But failure is a good thing, because that means at least you tried, and it still is going to give you confidence. I'm a big proponent of movement. All these activities that I've done, even walking, even hiking, all the different hikes have given my body a strength because I wasn't prepared for what was about to happen to me. First, they found a little cancer cell in my pancreas. So they cut off the head of my pancreas, which is called a whipple. I thought that's what nuns wore on their head. Then 2 years later, they found another little cell in my pancreas. They took out my entire pancreas, turning me into a type 1 diabetic. And then 2 years after that, they found a cell in my lung. So they had to cut out half of my lower right lung. Now, had I not done any of that walking, hiking, biking, running, swimming, I never would have gotten through these 3 operations, any of which can kill you, and many do. But just by making myself get out of bed, and it's the same thing for that person who doesn't want to climb that mountain, just you make yourself do it one step at a time. Do 1 lap around the hospital ward. Do 2 laps. do 3 laps. And I kept on moving, even though I had all these tubes sticking in and out of me. I just kept moving. And the more I moved, the more quickly I healed. And that's why people have to move. They don't have to climb mountains, but they got to move. They got to walk to their neighborhood park. They can walk. Walking is fine. They don't have to be a triathlete to do it. So my message to people has always been move. And also, let's say you're stuck in a rut. We all get stuck in a rut, and you're angry with yourself. You're bored. You're upset. You can't find a solution. Get out of the house. Walk around the block a few times. You come back and your head is clear. So that's my secret sauce is movement.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I tell you, it's amazing, like you said, what movement does for getting you out of your head or getting you out of a funk. You could just be having the worst day or mental block or confused or what, and just I've had times where just step outside of my office for a few minutes and take a breath, and it all feels like you're like, oh no, I'm clear. I get it. Yeah, movement and being outside to that end is a big part of that. Those are those are incredible feats to overcome, and whether it's certainly from your battle with cancer and having to overcome that, as well as just taking on these feats to begin with. But what for you has felt like the pull or the draw that's continued to keep pulling you towards adventure? Most people have this. There's some sort of bell curve, right, where we're excited, and then people decide that they are too old for something or whatever. And you clearly have continued to go kind of up and out and really seek that. So yeah, what continues to pull you towards adventure or experiences or engaging in life in the way that you do?
I think that it's exhilarating, it's challenging, and it's fun, and it keeps me healthy. Now, right now, I have other health issues. I had a total knee replacement, gone bad, not the fault of the surgeon. The idiot PT said, oh, you can get on your road bike, just go slowly, because I have my road bike on a trainer. And I take the first revolution and I hear crack. So that led to a hematoma, which was operation number 2. Then there was something called a Baker's cyst, which also burst. So this knee is kind of wonky. So there'll be no more climbing Mount Etna, which I did just 2 years ago. First we cycled up to the base, then we climbed it. And there'll be no more triathlons or marathons unless I want to be dead last. I just can't. My knee won't let me. But you know what? I have had so many years of being able to do whatever I want physically that it's not the end of the world. I am now boxing up a storm with a trainer twice a week. I love it to death. That keeps me going because I can take out all my frustrations on him and he will never hit me back. And I go on my road bike on the trainer. I don't dare go outside now because I've lost my balance. So I sold my beautiful Custom 7 bike, which I think came from Boston, not Denver, and sold my 2 Treks, which were kind of hybrids, so I didn't need them. Rode a city bike for years. Now there'll be no outdoor biking, but I can stay indoors. I can watch TV. I can go to spin classes. When you get injured, you find something else you can do. You always find something that you can do. And that, to me, why do I keep doing it? 1, because I love it. I just love boxing. And 2, because it's going to keep me healthy. I mean, look what I've gone through. I don't want to have any other horrible things happening. So,
yeah.
And I'm also on the 3rd part of my life. It's not going to get much better. It's as good as it's going to get right now physically. So I'm taking advantage of anything I could do now before I'm in some wheelchair, losing my teeth and eating yogurt. It's never going to.
Something tells me you'll still have a solution to that, or a way to stay at it, even if that happens. But You don't strike me as a sit down and eat yogurt kind of person.
No, but I always think about it.
It makes me think, us talking about you continuing to pursue, adventure and stay engaged. I think we'd be remiss to not talk about the role that travel's played in your life. I know you've been all over the world, and that's, like you said early on, from that first trip that you took for, a couple $100 on out. What has travel taught you? I mean, what role has travel played in your life, and what's it taught you about, whatever you're trying to learn in those moments?
Definitely. It's funny when you were saying that, I saw myself in Saigon trying to cross the street with these hundreds and hundreds of motorbikes circling around, and there was no way to cross the street. And I thought, I'm never going to get across the street. There's no such thing as a red light. So finally, some man came and took me by the hand and walked me across the street. And that's what I find when I travel. There are these moments of people helping you. The day I was walking in Tibet, and two women with coral and turquoise yarn braided in their hair for good luck were having their morning spiritual ceremony, and they invited me as they said their prayers and lit the sassafras, I think it was. And once in Morocco, I was training for a marathon, and there was only a hill to go up and down, so I'd run down it, and I was coming back up, and these two big women wearing their little, I think they're called whatever those little slippers are called with the pointed toes, and they grabbed me by both arms, and at first I was terrified, and they pulled me. They wanted to run with me up the hill, so we ran up the hill together, arms locked, and we got to the top of the hill. And remember, they're wearing these soft little slippers. We had to go at least a half a mile straight up. We got to the very top, and we're hugging and shrieking, and you know that call they have in Morocco, la, 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 which I cannot do. It was joyous, and it's those moments that keep me traveling and keep wanting to learn about other cultures. And it helps me, as you said, it's perspective. It's understanding my own life better. In any event, I have written a book because I felt so less than, for the same reason I told you that when I was traveling, I was writing down these experiences that other people wouldn't do. So I wrote a book for all the people in the world who feel less than. And it's called Becoming a Badass, From Fearful to Fierce. And that's how I think my life has gone, in the most wonderful way. And it's available. I read it on audiobook. It's available in paperback. It's available in Kindle, wherever anybody buys books. I just wanted to mention that because for those who are afraid, as I have been afraid so much of my life, I think this will help you. So it deals with divorce. It deals with family problems, inner child, marriage, and adventure, travel, and the inner things.
I love it. What does being a badass mean to you? What's your definition of that?
Very simply, not being afraid to try anything, even if you fail. You know, my best friend said, "You can't call your book badass." I said, "Why not?" She said, "Oh, that's a terrible word," because she thought of the pejorative of badass, which a lot of people do. But it isn't. It's a good thing. It means being strong and being daring and not being afraid. What does it mean to you?
I love that definition. It's something that just popped into my mind, to kind of ask that question. But it's interesting to think about that definition. Certainly, I'll say that I'm confident it's evolved with age. I'm certain that in my younger years, being a badass would have meant some more about, strength or ability, or, it would have been tied to some action, and now, I love that definition. I think I might steal that or borrow it, hopefully. being a badass, I think the ability to fail and to be okay with that and not let failure detour you or inform how you pursue things. The older I get, the more that I am interested um, in humility, and I like to kind of keep the mantra of, I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. I want to be around people where I can always be learning and be in environments that scare me and or I might not feel capable. And that feels like a pretty badass move. I think when I'm in those spaces and I'm humble and I'm patient and I'm kind and that's probably when I feel the most badass. And I'll say when I'm giving more value than I'm asking for, that to me is really important. I want to impact the rooms I'm in more than I'm asking for impact, and so, or the spaces I'm in or environments or whatever. So yeah, I'm going to think more about that. It's a really interesting question to think about, how that definition of being a badass, I think it evolves, especially, as a young man who was, frustrated by a lot of things. Being a badass might've been being able to, get in a fight or something. Not that I was particularly a fighter, but it's evolved, I think, into a much more nuanced version of that, which I'm actually very proud of. So, to that end, what do you feel like people, I mean, you've done more things, now at 81 than most people will do in younger versions of their lives. And it makes me think about the concept of, I guess, just aging or longevity. I mean, what do you feel like people are getting wrong about what's possible later in life? And I don't want to make it about age, but I'm very aware that, so many people just give up so early. It seems like they just resign themselves to some diminished version of what they could be. And you are the antithesis of that. So from your perspective, what do most people get wrong about the possibilities as they age?
I think that they go along with all the cliches about age. Oh, I'm not going to be able to do this. Or maybe they get a little bit arthritic, or they get spinal stenosis, or they need a new knee or a new hip. And they think, oh, recovery time is so much, it's just not worth it. They kind of give up because they associate age with a number. And they think, well, I can't do this anymore because I'm old. By the way, guess what? I'm no longer 81. I'm 82. But
sorry,
I'll still go.
I was giving you that 1 year back. That was my gift to you.
Thanks, but I don't need any back. I'm going to keep going forward.
There you go. I love it.
The thing about aging is that it's just not all the cliches that everyone says it is. If you see these people walking along the street, and you will, bent over, curved over, in a walker or with a cane, that's because they never worked out during their life and their spine just began to shrink. But there are also a lot of older people like me who aren't giving up and who aren't stopping to work out in whatever way we can. When I can no longer get on the bike, I'll find something different to do. Maybe I'll have to buy a recumbent bike or something. But for now, the road bike works fine. When I can no longer box, if that should happen, I'll find something else to do. But there will always be activities that we can do no matter what our age. And age, it sounds like a cliche because it is a cliche. But age is just a number. You don't have to pay any attention at all. If you're 65, so what? If you're 82, so what? You just keep doing whatever you can, because this is limited. We don't get all the time in the world. It gets cut off. And it could be cut off really early, either by cancer or by a car accident or by someone killing you in the street. You never know, when your number is up. So you have to live every moment as though it's your last. And just if you start living that this is the last day I have, I'm going to do it all, then suddenly you'll start saying, well, I didn't die today, so I have tomorrow. Now I'm going to do it all again. And you just keep doing as much as you can because it's going to make you a much happier person.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. I've often thought about that, this kind of the physics of it, which is, a body in motion stays in motion and a body at rest stays at rest. And I think, your wisdom around how we continue to move makes me think about that, is that if you just don't give it any credence, if you just continue to do what you can do, that is a body in motion, and it will stay in motion. It doesn't, there will be things that change and we all have obstacles, but if we stop, then that's when we get this precipitous decline. And I think so many people, again, resign themselves to that. But I want to round us out, and maybe with the hope of kind of pulling some of these, incredible parts of your life together. And you've overcome, like we said, so much, but certainly, feeling scared, feeling stuck, feeling small, feeling insignificant, powerless, my words, not yours. But if someone is feeling any of those things, again, stuck, small, powerless, where do they start? Because you've managed to take those things and create momentum and create opportunity and experiences, but that's not so many people's experience and so where can people start? And maybe it's not even when, it's if they feel those things. I think that's part of the human experience, that we all probably feel some version of that at some point. And so, where do we start when we feel those things?
Okay. I call it all less than all those things.
Mm.
I would start by reading my book, Becoming a Badass from Fearful to Fierce, because I felt so less than. And it took me so many years to feel as good as. So how did I do it? And maybe you do it a different way, but maybe you get ideas saying, wow, if she can do that, I can do that, because we're all the same. It's just that we've led ourselves to believe, or some parent or teacher or someone has made ourselves believe that we're just not good enough to try the things that other people can. And don't listen to that person. And we all still have that voice inside of constantly saying, you can't do that. We have these committee meetings in our head telling us that we're worthless. Well, we aren't. You don't listen to those committee meetings. You close the door and move on and take a walk around the block. I would say for anybody to start, move one foot, move one step, to just go to the end of the driveway outside and think, okay, what am I going to do today that's just a little bit different than I do every day? For me, it was Eleanor Roosevelt who said, try to do one thing every day that scares you. Well, I don't do one thing every day that scares me, but I try to do something at least every 3 or 4 months that terrifies me to death. And you can too, and all your listeners can.
That's great. Well, those are encouraging and strong words to end on. So, I'm grateful for your story and your passion, Margie. This has been a really fun conversation. Thanks so much for sharing it with us.